So what do we have here, a hero or a traitor? As details emerge from this confusing Bowe Bengdahl case, we're trying to figure out if the guy suffered from Stockholm Syndrome or Berkeley fever. If Bowe's foes are to be believed, he was a hippie traitor who grew disillusioned with the job and walked away. If you believe the White House, no man shall be left behind on the battlefield. The guy is an American hero. Even if he did desert, he served his time, so bugger off. Now, I think there's a lot more to the story than we're seeing and hearing, and not just because I'm in a celebratory mood because it's International Horrors Day. More on that later. I want to get to the bottom of it, and we've not yet scratched the surface. There is rumor, innuendo, and downright conjecture, and we'll separate all of it and make sense of it. And by this time, we'll figure out tomorrow night what Bowe knows. All I know is this is the Independence. Hi there. Welcome to your week and the very best part of your day. I'm Kennedy, your host tonight, along with Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch and Camille Foster from Free Think Media. They're smiling because we've got a secret, and that is, together we are the Independents. Count them. Yes. 1, 2, 3. All right. So Bowe Bengdahl's dad sprouted a beard for the big White House reveal that the long-lost soldier had been retrieved. But why did the guy go missing in the first place? Was it a change of heart, growing disillusionment in the mission, or was he working for the other side the whole time? All we know is Bowe Bengdahl was swapped for 5 shady Talibani, but who got the better end of the deal? Just ask the guy with the beard. Oh, what the hell is going on here? See, his dad sprouted a beard too. But don't worry, he wasn't part of the prisoner swap. Let us assemble a party panel to clarify the entire situation. Katie McFarland, she's a Fox News national security analyst. She's amazing, and you should believe every word she says. John Tierney, one of the smartest people I know, a science columnist for the New York Times. So, Katie, I'll start with you. Were you surprised by the news that Bowe Bengdahl had been retrieved and released?
Yeah, that deal had been rumored for a long time.
Years, in fact.
Yeah, and in fact, the previous Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, apparently was offered the deal and turned it down. And at that point, they were only going to swap 2 Taliban prisoners for the one guy. But there's a reason why you don't do this, because the minute you value, you've now put a price tag on an American life. And what we have done by doing this deal is every American now in Afghanistan, whether they're military or more importantly, whether they're civilians, they now have a price on their head and they have a big X on their back. So that as we are leaving Afghanistan, any Americans we're leaving behind, as teachers, as hospital workers, as NGO workers, they are now much more vulnerable than they ever were before. Plus the fact that we have now released 5 hardened al-Qaeda royal family guys, founders of al-Qaeda. They go back into the fight. We have seen in other times when we have released Gitmo prisoners, they have a pass-through. They may go to a country like Qatar, but they immediately pass through and they go back into the fight. So at the end of the day, as much as I, as a military parent, understand the grief that your parents feels when your child is in that situation, potentially in combat, I've got to say that there are going to be a lot more parents having a lot more tragedies to face down the road, because I think we will see more Americans taken hostage, and we will sure see more Americans targeted by these al-Qaeda guys we're getting out.
I wonder if you have the same criticism of the Israeli government, which has routinely engaged in these sort of exchanges in the past. I'm not quite certain I understand how this makes the situation more dangerous for people who happen to be in Afghanistan at this particular time. Certainly for soldiers, they already have targets on their back. They are already after them.
Yeah, but
there might even be an argument, and I'm not making this argument, I'm at least suggesting it, that once you capture someone, rather than executing them on camera, you actually hold them. In the hopes that you'll actually get something at some point.
I think the worry is you hold more people, because before this was seen as being very un-American. There was really no precedent set for this in modern warfare. And so if you've got someone that you can take and get someone in return, because before it was like, we're not going to deal, we're not going to negotiate with terrorists.
But the distinction here between a enemy fighter and a terrorist seems somewhat arbitrary.
I mean, I think
in this particular
enemy
case,
combatant is just a more technical term for terrorist.
But this is not unprecedented for the United States. I mean, George Washington exchanged troops.
Well, that's why I said in modern warfare, and since the Cold War, we haven't.
Here's why it's different: is because for us, we think of war as something. You have peace, you have war. War is finished. You sign the treaty. You go back to doing your own business. that war with al-Qaeda, and they are saying this themselves, is not a war that's ever over. So for them, this is not the end of the conflict where you exchange prisoners because peace has been declared. They're just looking at this as a temporary pause because they're about to ramp up for another round of fighting. And as far as we've never done this before, I was in the Pentagon, and a man who worked for me, a Marine colonel, was taken hostage by Hezbollah, was tortured, and he was murdered. And I felt that so, I mean, I can't tell you how that just tore me apart on the inside. But I know, and I knew he would have known, that if you were to negotiate for his release and release terrorists, Hezbollah, whatever was the price that was going to be paid, there were more Americans who were taken as a result.
All right, what do you think, Matt? Is this a bad deal?
You know, the whole thing about it is just so strange. I think we have to acknowledge that this is one of the hardest things that any president has to do.
Absolutely.
It's not, no one covers themselves in glory in doing this, so it is difficult. But it looks like a bad deal all around. I mean, I'm pissed off that Susan Rice went on the Sunday shows and started talking about Bowe Bengdahl's honor and distinction and how he was captured on the battlefield. The Pentagon report from 2010 that the AP is reporting on tonight says that they basically looked into it and he walked away.
And same with the 2012 Rolling Stone article.
All of his stuff was in a neat little pile. He didn't walk armed. He was always talking about the hills and walking far away. That's what he did. We went after him anyways, and we should go after him for sure. But trading 5 Taliban for this man and having at least 6 of our own killed in the process, and then lying to those people's families, right? They said, oh, you were killed while we were pursuing some Taliban people. No, you weren't. You were pursued while you were pursuing an American who walked off on his duty. So until we hear something else, it doesn't look good to me.
All right. Well, let's move on to something else. We're going to have more on Bowe Bengdahl a little later in the show from 2 different, very interesting kind of counter perspectives from one another. So stick around for that. Well, it just got a lot more expensive to be a coal miner's daughter, or at least to live in a coal-producing state. The EPA has laid down the law, and those federal tree huggers want to reduce CO2 emissions by 30% from 2005 levels. We're already halfway there. So what does this mean? What does it do? And does this arbitrary number make India and China laugh at our foolishness? John Tierney, you're the science guy. What do you think?
It's a great PR thing for Obama to do to please his environmental base. But, I mean, nothing, and it's great for lobbyists and for lawyers in Washington because they're going to be fighting about this for the next 2 decades. I mean, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA really should stand for the Environmental Procrastination Agency because it takes them so long to do anything. I mean, the way to be serious about carbon emissions is for Congress to do something, pass a law that has popular support. They couldn't do that, so they kick it to the EPA, but basically nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, so it's more regulations. It's not necessarily legislative. It's just another governmental body.
But it'll just get delayed for so long by challenges, by exemptions, by this. I mean, it took them 15 years to get lead out of gasoline.
Okay,
and you know, and that was a simple thing to do.
That's very funny. What I want to ask you, and feel free to jump in on this, guys, is, you know, they're demonizing coal with these new regulations, but at the same time saying natural gas is awesome. It produces, you know, less than a quarter of what coal factories spew. But you know how you get natural gas? Frack, yes.
Well, they're fracking more and more. That's the thing. I mean, the heart of the Democratic base doesn't like fracking, but even that's starting to splinter. Unions are getting behind it, and people who are governors and the Democrats from those states, they love it because it's creating
jobs.
dollar signs. And they're going to see dollar signs in other states that have this, hopefully eventually in New York state as well. So that's starting to change. They're basically ratifying or trying to ratify what is already taking place. We've seen this massive switch from coal to natural gas because of fracking in the last 5 years, and carbon has gone down. Emissions have gone way down as a result. And so they're just trying to put numbers and mandates on top of that, which seems strange.
It's kind of despite their best efforts of the Greens, you know, carbon emissions have gone down. They've fought nuclear power. They've fought fracking, the things that actually bring down emissions.
But the environmental left just can't get their story straight, Camille.
Yeah, and I think it's important to separate the stated purpose of this policy from its actual effect. What will happen for sure, we're not confident whether or not this will actually impact the rate at which the planet is warming. We do know that if this policy goes into effect, it will raise energy rates for everyone. Even
that rate will increase.
Who are purchasing energy to warm their homes, they're going to see problems from this. I did want to ask you quickly, though, John, do we actually get a better outcome if we're going through the legislative process to try to make rules? Are we more likely to ask practical questions as Congress is putting together legislation versus the president just making a pronouncement and going to the EPA in order to get this sort of stuff done.
I mean, something that's this difficult to do has to be done with popular support. I mean, there's been this fantasy in the environmental movement, you know, that will put a captain in charge of Spaceship Earth who will make all these rational decisions.
Or an emperor.
Yes, or an emperor.
In charge of the Death Star.
Political pressures, but nothing happens. I mean, you have to have a popular debate on this and have people behind it. I mean, Obama, it's hard to give away health insurance with Obamacare. Here you're asking people to pay more for electricity, give up their jobs, in return for something that's not really going to have any direct benefits to us. I mean, it'll raise, it might lower the temperature of the Earth by 0.04 of a degree by 2100.
But they're already paying more for health care and giving up their jobs there as well. So they'll have plenty of free time to read all about these regulations. All right, well, thank you guys so much. Katie and John will have you on a little later in the show to talk about even more interesting topics. Stick around for it. Former Ambassador John Bolton joins us to talk about his fake LinkedIn account and what are the diplomatic implications of a politically convenient prisoner swap. And next, more on Bowe Bengdahl from a man who knows far too much about the most mysterious prisoner since the Cold War. Stay with us. This is The Independence. All right, welcome back to The Independence. Where are we? Where we are? We are, aren't we? Yes, we are. We are nursing our Bowe Bengdahl obsession one rumor at a time. It is a very strange story with more twists and turns than a torrid telenovela. But what really happened 5 years ago to a young idealist from Idaho? Did he wander off to find the truth, or was he overtaken by shadowy forces against his will? Let's ask decorated veteran and Purple Heart recipient Bryan Suits, who joins us, a former Army officer. Suits has been in 3 international conflicts. He has led men just like Bowe Bengdahl. Bryan hosts a radio show weekdays from 9 to noon on KABC AM in Los Angeles. Welcome back, Suits.
Anytime. Anytime we free a prisoner.
Yes, that's when we really like to have you on.
I guess we're done.
So we were talking about this a little bit earlier. This deal has been years in the making. Why did it take so long? And is there some political convenience to it to get the VA story off the front page?
Well, first of all, I understand that Bowe Bengdahl wants to maintain his Taliban VA coverage because there's a shorter wait for a service goat.
That's funny.
But
That's awful.
Yeah, evidently this has been in the back pocket for a while. And obviously it becomes a political ace in the hole when you have a Shinseki problem and you need a beard for that. How convenient that this guy suddenly, is spirited out on Friday afternoon while his dad is busy retweeting Taliban tweets. So I think not just the cynic in me, but I think most people know, I think most people see right through this.
All right, so tell us what you see, because I know you have some incredible sources within the military. What are people telling you about this story? I mean, you have been giving me rumors about Bowe Bengdahl for years, so now you can shed light. He is a free man, so tell us.
My understanding from a personal friend who was in that battalion prior to them going to Afghanistan is that after Bengdahl was, after he disappeared, and they all knew he deserted. The entire battalion, the entire brigade knew that he had deserted. The unprecedented step of an entire brigade of about 5,000 men signing a non-disclosure agreement took place at Fort Richardson, Alaska. And prior to these guys redeploying back to Alaska, I've never heard of that. Never, ever, ever heard of that. Not even with the great Tillman cover-up of 2004, were they passing out NDAs. So they had an entire brigade of people who were supposed to keep clam about this. And then, the lid is off on Friday. So that's why now all these guys that served with him, if you can find one guy who served with this guy who will defend him, I'll cut this thumb off.
Bryan, did they sign those NDAs right after he was captured or after they launched some efforts to try to track him down? And concurrent to that, you've seen a lot of quotes from these people saying they're willing to rip up their NDAs. They're willing to take the hit for violating the terms of the NDA. What is the significance of that?
Yeah, if you're out of uniform, tough luck. The Army can come for you all day long. They're not going to do a thing. If you served in 1st Battalion, 501st Parachute Infantry, if you're part of 4th Brigade Combat Team, call me. The Army can't touch you. That NDA means nothing. Okay, it means nothing. They did it on their way out as guys were redeploying when it became clear that they were not going to get Bengdahl back. And after they had lost 6 or 7 men and many dozens injured for these pointless missions trying to find a deserter, the Army at that point said, how do we do damage control on this one? And they thought having GIs sign an NDA, guys that are on Skype, guys that are on Facebook signing NDAs would do it. But the story got out within months of the disappearance. And it's been fairly common knowledge amongst people in uniform or who have served in uniform for several years.
Well, Bryan, and that's just it. I want to bring you back to that quickly. How could the administration not have known what they were handling here? They certainly could have soft pedaled this when they were getting them out. They certainly didn't have to have a meeting in the Rose Garden with the president walking arm in arm with his mom, given the fallout that could have come with this situation.
Well, I'm sure Obama was shocked to find out on Friday that Gitmo is still open. And how convenient that was that they could find 5 people to trade for him. But you're right, and this is why I do think the administration is keeping him in Germany for another couple days, because they're not going to bring him back at high noon. They're going to bring him back at 2 a.m. Everybody in uniform knows he should be coming back in handcuffs because they all live by the code that he broke. And you can't expect to maintain morale if you don't do something about that guy. So they're going to back off the whole survival equals heroics thing. You know, he walked away. He made the bed that he slept in. 5 years of that. It's not heroic. In fact, it's cowardly. His father should shut up, and he'll be lucky if Bowe keeps any of the 5 years of back pay that they're going to hand him.
All right, so what happens, Bryan, very quickly, because we have to break. Is he charged?
I think that they will have an Article 32 hearing, and they'll all agree to discharge him for the good of the service, and he can go write his book.
All right, very good. Bryan Suits. Listen to him weekdays from 9 to noon on KABC AM in Los Angeles. Thank you so much. All right, what happens when multiple law enforcement agencies get together to fight legal substances in a small Texas town? Brutality, violence, and warrantless searches crossing into the purple zone. Next.
I don't want to grow up. Stay around in my old hometown. I don't want to put no money down.
Welcome back to The Independence. Let's get to a story that we've been keeping a very close eye on. Last month in tiny Alpine, Texas, the DEA, the Border Patrol, and local authorities launched a raid on a smoke shop. It was part of a program where they were looking for synthetic drugs. Ariel Lipson, whose sister Alana runs the Purple Zone smoke shop, she claims she was roughed up by officers during the raid. Tom Cochran is a neighboring business owner. He took pictures of the crazy raid and put them on Facebook, and that's when things got weird. Before Alana was allowed to post bond, she was allegedly forced to write a document that, quote, requests Tom Cochran retract his blog on Facebook and, quote, advise the media that Ariel Lipson was not beaten by agents carrying or using an M16 rifle, and her sister instigated/assaulted agents. That's already sounding fishy. All right, the photographer claims his store is being boycotted by agents and a Border Patrol union that took part in the raid. So why are these witnesses being silenced? We reached out to every agency involved in the story, the DEA, the local police, and the CPB. We have not gotten any comment from any of the agencies. However, Tom Cochran, a witness to the raid, he joins us here in studio tonight. Tom, welcome to The Independence.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So tell me what happened at the Purple Zone smoke shop in Alpine.
Well, basically, I run a screen printing shop just down the road, and the Lipsons are customers of mine. So I got a hold of Alana and asked her about an order we'd been talking about, and she mentioned that she was being raided by the DEA. So I got curious about this, so I grabbed my camera and ran down there to take some pictures.
And what did you see?
So I got there at the tail end of the raid, and I saw a bunch of DEA agents. I saw the door was broken down, there was blood on the sidewalk, and I saw a battergram in the front yard, and the DEA agents carrying out a bunch of documents and other items from the actual shop.
And did you talk to Ariel and Alana, the sisters?
I did, yeah. No, they Ariel, she was in jail by the time that I was able to make it down there, and so but she came by the next day as soon as she'd gotten out, and I took the photograph of her injuries that you guys just showed on here.
All right, so she had that big bruise on her neck that you've spoken with law enforcement. They say that's consistent with the butt of a rifle.
Well, I've spoken, law enforcement is denying it. I've spoken with other people. I mean, a friend of mine who was in Iraq says that he's seen things like that all the time. And I think that the DEA is kind of playing a little coy with this, saying that it wasn't an M16 because they don't carry M16s. It was an AR-15. But I mean, really, at what point is that kind of splitting hairs?
You're splitting hairs
yeah, exactly.
At that point. Okay, so you have a business there. And there was a graduate student who says that he just gets Red Bulls from the Purple Zone, Nick Branson. And he says that his house was searched without a warrant.
That's correct. Yeah, they came in and busted, because he lives behind the purple zone, and he rents the property from the Lipsons, but that's the extent of the relationship there. And they came and busted his door down as well, searched his house for 2 hours, then they went and got a warrant, and then came back. And their justification for the warrant, as I understand it, was he's a geology major, and they found a bag of miscellaneous crystals. Yeah. And they were trying to claim it was some sort of a drug. The guy's a geology major. I mean, they're rocks, you know. That's.
But he's also a graduate student who's working on a dissertation or a thesis, and they took his hard drives, they took his computers, and you know, it's really hard to get your stuff published or considered when law enforcement has it.
That's right. He had to withdraw from all his classes this semester. I mean, he was right up at the end, about to go take his finals, and he had to drop everything.
All right, so it's bloody, it's strange. There are no warrants, at least for some of the participants. Now, why were the sisters told to handwrite something asking you to take the pictures down from Facebook?
Well, it was the Streisand effect. I mean, it's, you know, these pictures got on Facebook. It got a big response locally, and then it kind of blew up from there. And then once it blew up, and Will Wheaton posted it in his blog, and then it hit, you know, Reason Magazine and a bunch of other outlets, then it,
Will Wheaton from Stand By Me.
Exactly. And, well, Wesley Crusher to me, but, you know, that's, he, yeah, once it went viral, they got really embarrassed about it, and they really thought that, I think they thought that if I took these photos down off of Facebook, the whole thing would go away. And that's just not really how the internet works, you know. I mean, my Dropbox account got suspended because of excessive downloads.
And she recanted, right? She apologized for signing under duress a thing asking you to take down the photos.
When she got out of detention, federal detention, she came immediately to my shop before she went anywhere else, came up and gave me a big hug and thanked me for not taking the photos down. So yeah, no, she, you know, and I've talked to Alana about it, and she said it was completely under duress. You know, it wasn't something she wanted to sign. They handed it to her and made her sign it.
And they didn't find drugs. They weren't looking for drugs. They were looking for synthetic drugs that, you know, they say cause a high like marijuana. So what? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and in this last raid, yeah, there's this whole issue is so big and sprawling. I mean, it's the ones that she's currently under indictment for were ones that weren't made illegal by the DEA until 3 months after the date of the last raid. And in this current raid, the only thing they took was kratom, which is a herbal stimulant it's in the same family as coffee plants.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably get higher off a couple cans of Red Bull.
Current interaction with the authorities, either the DEA or local authorities, is anyone talking to you at this point?
You know, I had a nice conversation with the sheriff the other day. I mean, he's a real good guy. You know, the local authorities don't really have much to do with this. This is mostly the local district attorney, and then the feds are kind of working on this one. I mean, the sheriff and the police department don't really have much to do with it.
But Border Patrol, the union, is boycotting your shop. Does that hurt your business?
Actually, it's been pretty good for business. I've had stuff coming in from all over the country. I mean, it's, you know, I'm shipping an order out to Florida in a couple days. I got another one going to New York State. I got stuff going out to California now. It's kind of put me on the national stage. I mean, you really can't buy that kind of exposure, you know?
Well, thank you for taking all that photographic evidence. It's a very interesting story, and, you know, it's insane what people think they can get away with, especially in small towns. People cannot be silenced, especially when they love freedom. Tom, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, absolutely. Well, the Hunger Games, Thailand edition, and you won't believe where one newlywed put her newborn during the wedding. Hint, it wasn't with a babysitter. Topical Storm is next. Stay with us. All right, it's time to rain the crazy news all over your face like champagne. Hail, yes, it is the Topical Storm. Topic number one. So what do you do when your country has been co-opted and corrupted by a bunch of authoritarian militarists? They're imposing martial law and a sucky ongoing coup. You channel the world's most popular apocalyptic heroine, Katniss Everdeen. She's the character played by Jennifer Lawrence in The Hunger Games, and her three-fingered salute has become the new anti-coup. It's not just a recognition of America's pop culture dominance, it's also a way of flying the finger, or three of them in this case, to the oppressive man. Next, protesters will be donning Steve Rogers shields to fight off bullets as they fight for freedom and justice in Thailand. He's Captain America.
There's yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I have no idea who you're talking about, Steve Rogers. He was a pitcher for the Expos in the 70s. I love random pop culture nuggets in international protest. I remember being in Serbia during student three-fingered salute days. This is Serbian salute. And there was a big picture of then Lakers center Vlade Divac, and it just said defense.
Did they hold up a D and a little white fence? Because I love that one. All right, very good. Topic number two. So when you have a baby and then you have a wedding, but you go in that order, someone has to watch the little one. So what do you do when all your friends and relatives are packed into the church watching you get all manned up in your beautiful white dress? Well, you strap the child to the train.
Oh.
That's what new mom and new bride Shauna Carter Brooks did. She tied her 4-week-old baby to her flowing white train so the little girl could follow her down the aisle. God, I hope there weren't any steps at the altar. Some folks in attendance gasped in horror, while others praised the diva for creatively including her daughter on such a special day. Shona got a little sick of the criticism. She basically told haters to eat a bouquet of sticks. Okay? Would you do that, Camille, if you had a tiny baby?
You know, I mean, the baby wasn't harmed. I imagine you could pull a baby on a blanket. Mm-hmm. There were all sorts of people there who cared about the family.
Look at that little baby on that dress.
Ken Burns that and just kind of like...
Yeah, you probably can't do that now. A little technical.
It's like an Ann Geddes picture right there. It's like a little postcard.
It's nice.
It's like a baby on a pumpkin.
I'm sure they picked the baby up immediately
on a moving. Probably they did.
Sure.
Actually, the third-degree rug burns will be a problem, right?
Yeah, you put a little Aquaphor on that. Those things are fine. They heal themselves.
Good. Babies are durable.
They really are.
That's what I love.
You know what? You're not even a parent yet, and you know that.
Yeah,
Very good, Camille. The future is bright. Topic number 3. Well, now that Donald Sterling's no longer calling his girl and making insensitive racist remarks, what's a call girl to do? V. Stiviano, the woman at the center of the Sterling storm, was out and about in New York when she claims she was roughed up and punched by a couple of thugs who allegedly called her the N-word. She said she was singled out for the beatdown, that she was beaten on the right side of her face, which isn't her good side, but neither is her left. And as of this broadcast, she has not taken her tale to the police. Stiviano, for the record, was also recorded saying untoward things about black people, so she'll also have to sell her basketball team to Steve Ballmer.
What are the chances of 2 white guys in Manhattan, New York, yelling the N-word at a random lady who...
And then assaulting her.
And in front of a bouncer at a crowded club.
That would have to happen like every single day in New York, and it happens almost never. So don't believe this story.
Yeah, don't believe the story.
I don't believe it either, V, for what it's worth. Nah, don't worry. We've got a special international day to celebrate people like V. Stiviano a little later in the show. You're going to want to stick around for it. Trust me. All right, topic number 4. Get ready to barf and sing, which is tough to do at the same time, but you can do it. Frozen was one of Disney's biggest animated hits of all time, and the movie's Oscar-winning song, Let It Go, has inspired countless tributes and parodies. The Hateful Toads at Westboro Baptist Church were among the inspired. Their version of Let It Go will make you hope they go to hell. Take a peek.
Let it go, let it go, don't give the anymore. Let it go, kick him out and slam the door.
Ow, it burns. I'm sorry, we had to bleep out the other F word, the one you call people who like to kiss each other of the same gender.
I remember when America was a great place and when people who didn't like gay people could hit a note, for crying out loud. That is some nasty stuff.
Horrible.
We could out-sing. We have like 8 people in this room who could out-sing the Westboro Baptist Church.
I actually hoped that this group might disband after their patriarch died.
Yeah.
Apparently that hasn't happened yet, unfortunately.
No, and he's spinning like a... Well, what is he doing in HE double hockey sticks right now, do you think?
I don't know.
Do you think he's tonguing gnats out of Hitler's bungus? One can only dream. All right, well, we've got very serious stuff to get to. We've got former Ambassador John Bolton fuming. Is it a fake social networking account and a bad hostage deal? What has him fired up? LinkedIn, Bengdahl. It's all next. Stay with us. There he is.
They did the boogie woogie with a study roll. They mess around. They're doing the mess around.
Hey there. It's the Independence. You knew that. You're that good. All right, so what do you do when the Iranians set up a fake account in the name of former UN Ambassador John Bolton and the mustachioed diplomat starts asking you personal questions? That's a struggle several politicos recently faced when they thought Mr. Bolton himself had contacted them with his groovy LinkedIn account. It wasn't the lightning bolt. It was a phony. Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, is here in the flesh. Or is this some cruel Tehranian joke? Is it really you? You're quite convincing.
Thank you. I think I'm pretty convincing myself, but the Iranians, I'm really honored that they picked me to be the hook that they dangled in front of some of these people. Sadly, it had some success, and I think it's an indication of the extent to which Iran and others that use cyber espionage, cyber hacking capabilities are prepared to go.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really hacking. They were just being kind of crafty and lame, really. When did you first hear about it?
When a reporter called me and said he's going to write a story about this, what did I know about it? And the answer was nothing. And
so none of these people contacted you, and through your email account, and said thanks for the LinkedIn shout out, and let's go have lunch?
There's some question how many people were involved, but it's pretty clear from the stories that we do know that what they were trying to do was get people to reveal information about activities inside Iran.
Are you on LinkedIn?
So that, well, I was, but my secretary finally got tired of responding to all these requests people kept sending to LinkedIn, so it must be well over a year since we've done anything on it.
Yeah.
So all that Facebook back and forth between you and me, that was real.
I think that was,
I feel like
but it's not by me, it's by the people who do my Facebook account.
Why did you need my mom's maiden name?
Well, it goes to the scam we're pulling on your mom, and No, I think it really is a lesson that what can happen over the internet can ensnare people who are well-meaning, well-intentioned, who think they're sophisticated. It can still work.
So what you're saying is we should just totally disband the NSA?
Not quite. No, actually, we need more NSA protection to help us combat this Iranian cyber espionage.
Oh, that's what we need. Oh, okay.
Right.
Very
right.
good.
The NSA's latest nefarious plot, is facial recognition. You know where they're getting it from? Facebook, things like that, where people put it out there on the internet.
Yeah, but it's funny because we're going to talk about that a little later on. But I want to talk to you about this Bowe Bengdahl thing because you have maybe a different take on it than we've seen earlier in the show. We talked to KT McFarland about it. We talked to Bryan Suits, who is a decorated war veteran who knows people who served in Bengdahl's command. And, people who served in the Army with him basically say he's a traitor.
Yeah, well, the information that's coming out today, I think we probably knew 5 years ago, and a lot had simply been forgotten. So it really makes the story even worse than it is. But even if Bengdahl were an upstanding soldier, really were a legitimate prisoner of war, I think this exchange is inexcusable. I think the worst part about it is the moral equivalence that Obama implicitly conceded by saying an American soldier is equal to a Taliban terrorist. And that gives the Taliban a legitimacy that they obviously don't deserve, something they've sought for a long time.
Yeah. Now, Ambassador Bolton, what I've seen reported, however, is that the reason this came up to begin with was because they were in negotiations trying to talk about peace, and that the administration isn't the one who said, look, we'll release these 3 people, you give us back a terrorist. They were saying, we'll release several of these people from Guantanamo as an act of good faith. I mean, if the Taliban are the folks who actually made the request, I'm not certain that it's fair to sort of throw this all on the administration as making a terrible decision and a terrible prisoner swap.
Well, if they were prepared to release the prisoners with no quid pro quo, that's even worse. These people are high-level Taliban operatives. 2 of them were governors of provinces in Afghanistan before 9/11. One of them was the deputy head of Taliban intelligence. One was a deputy military commander. These are people who will go back to the battlefield after spending a year in some villa in Qatar. And when Taliban takes over again in Afghanistan, as they surely will when we leave, we will see them again attacking us and other Western targets. These are bad people.
What do you want to do? Keep Guantanamo Bay open for good? I mean, regardless of Bengdahl.
Look, these people are illegal enemy combatants. Even if you were to argue that the Geneva Convention applies to them, you're entitled to keep prisoners of war for the duration of the conflict. And as far as I can see, this conflict's got a long way to go.
Well, sure, if you call it an open-ended conflict forever. Right. We're defining it as the conflict that will never end, which allows for this kind of legal...
It's not a question of allowing to keep these people there. They are murderous thugs. They target
They're allegedly
civilians.
murderous thugs. We don't know in the case of Guantanamo Bay. We just don't here.
I mean, there are 160 whatever people still in Gitmo. Even the Obama administration has not been able to convince other governments to take them. That's how bad they are.
I mean, some of these folks were actually minors when they were brought into the program.
Not the ones who were left.
There have certainly been reports
that
there were people who were there who were, in fact, radicalized at Guantanamo Bay, who were sort of just caught up in a dragnet.
I think that's a minimal number of people.
So do you think we could have gotten Bergdahl without the prisoner swap?
Well, I'm not sure what Bergdahl is worth, frankly. I think a commander-in-chief's got to make a hard decision. If the Taliban had said, give us $100 million and we'll give you Bergdahl,
well,
I would have said no.
For the president, it's worth not talking about Shinseki anymore.
Well, you know, the president's now on his way to Poland, and I think he's taken the White House staff with him. This is a bad time for him to be out of Washington. This thing is exploding, and I don't think we've seen the end of the information about what went into the swap
I think
yet.
we've hardly seen the beginning on so many levels. Ambassador Bolton, thank you very much.
Glad to be with you.
Very good. The NSA has seen a million faces, if you just heard, and not only have they rocked them all, they've shoved them into a secret database. Is your face causing disgrace at the spying place? Find out next as we reconvene our panel Independence Now. All right, you've heard of the NSA collecting metadata, listening in on phone calls, even penetrating social networks. So why are they snapping up pictures of millions of mugs? The NSA is supposedly harvesting the images from emails, texts, and even video conferences and storing all of it for future use in facial recognition programs. How does this erode your privacy? And should you have a say when the NSA yells, cheese? Our panel is back, KT and John. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome back, lady and gentlemen. All right, so what do you think, Matt? Civil libertarians are up in arms. Other people say, who cares? The facial recognition software is already there.
If you know any foreigners, damn foreigners who have to go through the airport when you come back from Europe, what they've been doing now for going on 10 years is not just like fingerprinting all 10 fingers, but taking pictures of your eyeballs. This whole kind of move towards biometric identifications has been happening. We've been doing it since 9/11, forcing all countries that have visa waiver programs with us, whose citizens can come here for 6 months without a visa. They have all had to adopt these biometric passport identification technologies because we want the database. So now we are getting the database, and we should be alarmed because America has developed a culture, and righteously so, of we don't have national IDs. We don't have the DNA thing that you can just see. Unfortunately, the whole national surveillance structure has been moving us down that direction, and if we don't fight it at every step like this, we're going to get that.
All right, so, but let me ask you this. We have this technology. It's going to get easier and easier and easier to use. The government's saying, you know, we need to use technology to keep an eye on the bad guys. How do you keep them in check? And how do you keep ahead of technology when it comes to the government and surveillance?
Well, you need transparency and you need accountability. I mean, those are the two main ingredients, and we obviously don't have that. If these programs exist, then we don't know much of anything about them. The difference between when a private company, for example, builds a facial recognition software platform or database of some sort is that they're actually constrained by licensing agreements with the users and the law itself. We don't know that the government is actually being governed by any sort of law with this particular program. It's absolutely imperative that we know what's going on with programs like these.
And what do you think, KT?
You know, I have an issue with the government doing the metadata collection, listening to the phone calls, potentially monitoring emails. I don't have a problem with this. Why? Because they already know what we look like. The reason the data facial recognition software is so valuable is if you think that there are bad guys coming into the United States to do us ill, this is how you find them. You don't find them by doing passport checks of names because, for example, in the Middle East, names change.
Yeah.
Or one name, you know, the underwear bomber, he got in because somebody had one letter that was wrong in the form that they filled out with his name, even though we knew he was coming. We couldn't find him because we had one name, one letter spelled wrong. In an era where we now have over 1 million people on a do not fly, you know, on a watch list, this is the only way you're going to narrow down.
I'm not so
bad
sure about
guys.
that. I mean, we don't know much about the efficiency and effectiveness of a program like this. Facial recognition technology
with the technology and the algorithms and the application.
It's still in its infancy, though, and we don't know how much is being invested in a program like this. One problem with building a haystack this large is you actually make the haystack bigger. You don't necessarily improve your ability to pull effective intelligence out of that haystack. That doesn't necessarily make us safer. Worth asking that question as
the
well.
system we have now doesn't work because we're now watching everybody.
This is
and
part
if
of
you're
the
watching
system.
everybody, you're
but
watching
I
nobody.
think that's the point he's making is we've got a haystack system now. We're collecting so much metadata. We're collecting so much information from a variety of sources that you can't possibly be efficient with it. There's no way you can employ enough people to go through that stuff and find the bad guy.
See, I look at something like this and say this allows us to winnow it down. I've always thought that we were deploying our resources badly, that we should start stereotyping, not stereotyping for racial, every other thing, but profiling for behavioral characteristics of people.
Okay.
If you've gone back and forth to Pakistan and the tribal areas a dozen times, we ought to know that.
All right, so 10 seconds, Tierney, what do you say?
I don't mind Google knowing all my friends' faces because Google can be sued if they do something bad with it. But the NSA you can't sue, and there's such a temptation for them to leak stuff against their political opponents, the way the IRS has done it, and that's what I worry about.
And with other enforcement agencies that have nothing to do with national security.
Exactly.
All right, good point. All right, thank you both very much. Great to have you guys. Thanks so much. Today is a very special day, and many of you can thank Maya Angelou. She gives it even more significance, believe it or not. What is the day? I'll tell you in a moment. Come celebrate with us next. Welcome back to the Independence. It is International Whores Day, a day when sex workers are celebrated and empowered to remove the stigma of charging people money to get gooey and make weird noises. The holiday started in 1975 in France, so hookers in that country could legitimize the world's oldest profession next to cave paint removal. So how are you celebrating International Whores Day? Let's ask the boys.
By offering you some flowers.
Oh, it's so special. Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
A double bouquet.
Very nice.
Oh, they smell delicious. I feel so fresh.
Fun fact, International Whores Day from 1975 in France was sort of the Stonewall of the prostitution movement, right? Stonewall is the bar in New York City where people had protests or beaten up by cops, and it kind of galvanized the sex worker movement to come out of the shadows. Unfortunately, they didn't get very far. It was something that had wheels or had momentum in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But since then, because of kind of the international outcry about sex trafficking, the idea of actually removing prohibition from sex work ended, and I think it's too bad.
All right, well, I love the flowers. How are you celebrating with your special flower?
Well, I brought some flowers for you, but I wanted to comment quickly. I think you're exactly right. It's unfortunate that this issue has been hijacked by folks who are exclusively and narrowly talking about sex trafficking. That's not happening in every single case, and it's important that we have a mature conversation about consenting adults purchasing a service from one another.
Consent, empowerment, and the evolution of society. To not demonize people who choose to do horrific, disgusting things with their bodies. Hooker, please. We're not done with you yet. Go to our Facebook page right now for our after-hours show, foxbusiness.com/theindependence. It's going to be a great after-hours show. I hope you join us. Thank you so much for being here. For Matt Welch and Camille Foster, I'm Kennedy. Good night.